vagueness. It's
Sorry, I realized I forgot to start the recording.
yeah. Thank you,
That's
Jesse.
okay. Yeah.
Am I correct in thinking that drainage is akin to the landscape issue that it's there's obviously a requirement, it's a priority, but the standards for how they would approve or disapprove a plan are not clear from the code?
And akin to lot coverage.
Michelle has a particular interest in that, and she said that she would do some research to see what the broader industry practice is and whether Somerset is in step or out of step with it. Okay. Other big
Obvious,
picture.
and obviously the part of the stormwater stuff is, I'm assuming it's connected to that committee that worked on it and made recommendations but the issue is how are those actually implemented, right?
Right.
Um,
Phyllis, she had some feedback.
uh,
You want to try again?
Those, yeah, okay.
It's still
Do
feeding
you,
back.
yeah, do you have it
And there
like
are two of
on your
you on.
phone as well? Is there two? Yeah, that's why. Okay, yeah.
You're
I
on
got
twice.
let me get out and start again.
2-8.
That might be better.
Yeah. When I was a kid, there was a TV show, and the punchline was, "Will the real Phyllis Weisenfelder stand forward?" Two people pretending to be the same personality. Oh,
Well, that's happening. Question: what is Michelle meet? Gee,
Yeah, I was
no,
wondering what that
is
is.
I didn't
I'm
get that question.
sorry, Joe. What's your question?
Michelle's participating? It seems by some sort of app. Did
Yeah,
she?
she assigned her note taker. She cannot be here in person because she had a conflict.
What is it?
It's an AI recording. Just like you, if you chose to, you could turn on the Zoom recording and it would turn this conversation into a hallucinatory transcript. Which, if you're dealing with confidential information, I'm glad we're not. These recordings are really poison. Bad idea. I don't
Yeah,
encourage.
that's creepy to me. And
Yeah,
effectively,
actually, I need to.
recording this meeting. Uh, I don't know why this. It's like double. I
Yeah, I might actually kick that out because I do think with the Maryland Open Meetings Act, um, that's basically like taking a transcript and there's something about, I don't think that's allowed.
Very
Hey,
well. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not necessary because the,
Yeah.
the Zoom recording will be posted. Okay. Phyllis, you were trying to get in a question before the two of you spoke.
I'll try again. Can you hear me now?
Loud and
Working.
clear.
Oh, I was just gonna say on the stormwater management, some of those systems, I guess for the newer houses, are really ugly. The concrete barriers, whatever they put. Um, I don't, I don't know if there's another way around it, but they're not attractive. I don't know if anyone's looked at them. Uh, Kind of ruins backyards, or there's a house on Essex has the concrete in the front yard. I'm not sure what the options are, but um, that's all. That's just a comment.
Okay. Okay, final call for big picture reactions or questions about Steve's orientation.
Well, I just have one comment. I thought he gave a very good basic overview of the process. I felt that there were some details that still need to be.
Kumar, I can barely hear you.
Oh God.
Yeah, same. I think it
Can
might
you hear me
be,
now? Can you hear me now?
I mean, a little better, but like I have my volume all the way up and for some reason your audio is like considerably quieter than everyone else's.
How about now?
Good.
Any
Yeah, I
better?
can hear you better now, I think. Yeah.
I'll try to speak up. I thought Steve gave a really good overview of the permitting process. I felt that there were still more details that need to be fleshed out, particularly for variances. Uh, and I think also we need to understand better the staff's role because I don't see it. What I think was written in Bob's minutes is it was almost portrayed as a balls and strikes argument that all the staff is doing is checking to see whether uh, the plans meet the code. But I think based upon what I've observed, there's more to it than that. I think we need to really look into this process in which the staff is basically facilitating the crafting of an application that it thinks will pass muster with the council. And there's no counterpoint to that. There's no advocacy on the part of the neighbors or other town residents in that process. So I think that process really needs to be looked at.
So would one way to look at that be through a case study? Because that, I think Joe suggested that. I thought that was a really good idea to just walk us through the process with one of these case studies that we're all interested in, the ones that have been controversial.
And I think you'd have to get all the emails, all the correspondence in
Well,
order to see the
not that
process.
much detail, but
I think you'd have to because
Well, he committed to do an outline of 1522 of kind of fora for kind of a skeleton to begin this. Kind of reflecting on this, it comes back to just examples. And one of the things that we have a library that Bob has been developing here, and that's an excellent tool. But how it's kind of like talking to ourselves. Phyllis reference to the Stormwater Management Committee. If we had to go on the town website to find kind of what their conclusions were, or search for whatever, a house or a particular instance, we can't do that. The website's not set up that way. And to me, it would be wonderful in whatever we do that is more accessible rather than knowing how to find it and playing with it. It's like go to the website, put in 1522 Greystone Street, and you get all of what's been in town journals, minutes for town meetings, and you can basically sort for yourself what you want to know about it. Or this house that Phyllis is referring to. We're like keep making these references, but we're not connecting the dots. And if anything, I think that's what we want to do, because Kumar just suggested this process is complicated and people don't know what to expect. and they're doing the best they can, and we're kind of not knowing what dots to connect, and people need to be better informed about that, particularly if they're going to buy a house here in Somerset. There seemed to be some of that going on, but you know, like if we were a homeowners association, you have to deliver to the buyer a whole set of documents, and they acknowledge that they understand what they're getting into. We're a little bit set up differently, but to me, that's kind of a standard of boxes to check how that, because you know, you get new residents saying, if I had known this, I wouldn't have gone forward. And part of that is, Justin, is there anything like that that, you know, I did some searching on our website that is a tool there that you use when this comes up in your everyday work. I know I talked with you and EJ a while back when 5407 was having all her problems with variances and saying this is no way to treat a new resident. And you guys were working on it, and I think developed something. Is there something on the website that you can maybe help me with, if anything?
Like you mean like for applicants to know the rules in Somerset, like a frequently asked questions?
Yeah, that was the closest in terms of it on that I saw, but it
Yeah.
covers kind of expectations, you know.
Yeah. So I mean I do think more could be added to the website, which would be a good thing to do. I do know something that we've done to fix that is we now, and I don't know if you remember, Steve briefly kind of mentioned it at our last meeting, but now whenever Montgomery County gets an application for like a building permit project in Somerset, uh the residents have to get approval from the town of Somerset first. And that kind of triggers a meeting that has to happen between the applicants and Steve to basically let the residents know about the rules and kind of so you can talk with them and see what the project is. So we've kind of baked into building projects a requirement that you basically have to meet with Steve. But it's the requirement is to help people, you know what the rules are and to make everything easier for everyone. So that's one of the things we've done, but I think more could be added to the website.
And they do that before they apply for a permit?
Not before. I mean, so if somebody moved into town, and they, they're new and they didn't really know anything about the town of Somerset regulations, and they went to go demolish their house and build a new home, when they go to apply for the county would see it's in Somerset and would say, hey, like, we need permission from Somerset. Like, we need them to sign off that they are aware of this. And when we become aware of it, then we have a meeting with the residents. So somebody could, I guess, technically spend all the money on making plans for a house and then go to the county for permission, and then realize they have to do Somerset. But I'd like to think they wouldn't do all the engineering before they even look at Montgomery County or Somerset.
I can't believe people do that that people don't do that before they purchase
But
a house.
Nancy, the process can be very fast. There's now an addendum to the contract which alerts people that their town rules and regulations. It's a 2-page addendum. I should have printed it out to tell people to look things up. But it's not really enforceable for ratification if somebody doesn't get that disclosure addendum. Their contract still ratified. It's anyway, but
So is it a good faith kind of issue with the realtor, basically?
it's a new form. I can print it out and send it to you. It's very new. It's a few months old. But I mean, I agree, people don't know what they're getting into. Um, I think it's interesting. There's the realities of what a real estate market can be. The house can go on the market, it can get multiple offers quickly. That's great for the seller. The buyer has to move fast. The buyer may have no way out if they want to get this house, no contingencies. I mean, right now, the last few years have been a very seller-friendly market, and then they find things out when they get involved in the process. Um, I mean, one of the things I suggested to Robert, maybe it would be nice if the town developed helpful hints when you're going to do a renovation project, or helpful hints if you're going to tear down, but to get people a better idea what they're getting into. So Joe, the thing if we became an HOA, so then somebody has a review period and they can pull out for any reason. That's a benefit to the buyers, but town residents who are selling their house may not consider it a benefit to them. It's sort of where you sit at the table on this.
Which
But-
side of the table? John?
Suggesting we become a homeowners, no way.
No, but I mean, I get what you're saying. People don't know what they're getting into. Um, it's just interesting. And one of the comments I made to Robert, people have said to me, boy, this was the worst process they've ever seen, and they renovated it in DC. It was so much easier, and our process is very difficult. So, I mean, and
Okay, I'd like to be the time nudge now and move us along. But in doing, I'd like Justin to reinforce Joe's original point about searchability. My summary is that I think there's three problems here. One is the search function itself, whatever software package we're using, doesn't seem to be very high performing.
Okay.
And I don't know if this is part of Donna's project as the consultant for information systems or not, but I'd love to hear her view on what we're using versus, a more just a system with much broader random access retrieval from word-based searches.
Mhm.
Secondly, I did what Joe suggested in terms of the house on Greystone, Miriam's house, and after struggling with it for 2 hours, I realized the problem was that documents were completely missing. Some of the videos were missing and some of the forms were missing. And in another meeting within a month of that event, there was mention of a staff survey of heights for the entire city. That document is missing. Apparently it was part of a master Google Drive, but that connectivity has been lost. And so we have very serious system failures that go to the heart of what this committee should be concerned with, as you saw today. And the final one is that a lot of the information we've been carping about is actually being provided by applicants. And again, I'll refer to 4803. But they're buried in 6-point font in the middle of a plat-sized document. And if you try to read it as a PDF, I had to get a different pair of glasses to do that. So there must be 10 most important facts that residents care about that are put in the 6-point font part of the documentation. And if we simply ask that those be moved into the application itself, is sort of a billboard, this is what you should care about, that would go a long way to making it transparent. And I'll come back, since that's a pet peeve of mine, I'll come back to that when we get into the weeds of procedure.
Well, sometimes the applications are handwritten, And in fact, the driveway application that the council just reviewed at the last meeting was written in cursive script.
Wow.
There's actually not even a requirement that the application be in English, or that it be in
Yeah,
a certain font, or that it be printed or typed. There's no requirement.
So if I may move us along, I wanted to direct our attention to the part of the conversation where Steve summarized what's required for a permit, and then contrast that with the document that was put on the meeting agenda for the July 20th council working session. So I'll share my screen again with you. This is a slide I showed you last week, which captures, I think, pretty much what Steve covered. And he indicated that several of these next door relatively minor impacts were under discussion by the council and or the mayor. For example, he made a point about air conditioners and heat pumps. The modern equipment is so much more efficient and so much quieter that almost any replacement is going to be far better than what it's replacing. So let me go on then to the document that was posted, what was it, 2 days ago. This is from recommendation number 5 from the mayor to the council. And this is not quite the same what we were talking about. This is not when permits are required. This is when a hearing is required. So it's not clear from the mayor's proposal whether or how his relaxation of the hearing mandates would affect the actual permit decision per se, and whether that's going to become an administrative rather than a council function. So just look at this for a moment. The questions that I had about it are, first of all, is he equating new construction with demolition in all cases? In other words, I guess that would have to be the case. If you're going to tear a house down, you're going to replace it with something. The second question, though, I don't think is spoken to at all, and that is, how does the hearing issue relate to changes for infill versus standard method development? And does the shifting of hearing requirements influence that controversy at all?
Can you explain those terms?
Sure. I sent you an attachment that Steve provided from the Montgomery County standard method development for an R60 zone.
Mm-hmm.
And
I see it.
So Ken, if you wanted to significantly improve your house, including making it bigger, you could go standard method or you could go infill development. What's the difference? Well, new construction, as Steve explained, in all cases is quote unquote infill development. If you're doing standard method development, you can occupy up to 35% of your lot, matter of right, as a homeowner. Unless you cross the threshold of tearing your whole house down and rebuilding it with a new house, or unless the amount you're replacing is 50% of the existing structure or greater. If that's the case, and you trip over the line and become infill development rather than standard method, then you are constrained to occupy no more than 20% of the lot, or perhaps even less if your lot is bigger. There's a sliding scale between 10 and 20%. And so obviously, if you're a developer or a homeowner who wants to maximize your space, you want to avoid becoming infill development by staying below that threshold, and thereby qualifying for the 35% maximum coverage. I hope I didn't mangle that.
I got most of it. We don't need to dwell on it unless others do, but
So this is the new this is the new regime's first foray into simplifying what's required in terms of hearings, but it's not addressing squarely whether there's any change in permitting or standards.
Gotcha.
In particular, it's not clear who would approve the permit regardless of whether there's a hearing or not. Would it be the council, as the code would require in some of these cases, or is that also being shifted to administrative staff?
So you're saying our administrative staff can do hearings?
No, I'm simply observing that the mayor is proposing that hearings would not be required for the council, implying that there would be no hearing at all
Right.
before the public. And the question I'm asking was, well, are there any changes in who makes the decision on the permit per se? Will it continue to be the council without a hearing, or will it be delegated to the staff?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And from my notes on the committee discussion, this is after Steve stopped talking and the committee took over. So as was observed earlier, we discussed the process for variances, but there's an open question as to whether there are adequate criteria for council approval of variances. I think that's an important issue that merits comparison to what other cities do. Landscape plans, there's no criteria for council approval. We discussed that. The question of lot coverage, standard method versus infill construction. Ken, we talked about that for a good 20 minutes or so with Steve. And the takeaway I had from the conversation on July 1st was folks were concerned about whether the town was measuring these thresholds accurately. Was Miriam Rosenthal's house really standard method construction, as Steve explained it was?
Hey, Bob, under those notes, I don't know if it's a typo or not, but you have in example 3, 4806 Grantham was infill. Did you meant 4803?
I did.
Okay, just even though we approved the minutes, it's something for the record that should be. I noticed that.
I will correct that and make sure that Justin gets the correction. Thank you. And then in the conversation about case studies, we were throwing out all kinds of suggestions. And I'd like to pose to you all today the opportunity to think in a quiet moment, which of the stories you've heard really merit a careful case study. I think there's an agreement that 5522 Greystone should be one. I will volunteer to do the first draft of 4803 Grantham since I've kind of written it already. And then beyond that, the floor is sort of open. One of our neighbors who lives at 4914 Dorset had good things to say about the development process because she, as the owner, tore down their old house because of its extreme flooding problems. And her experience was good. So it would be good to have a wide range of experiences, but this is just a beginning. I don't think we should bite off more than we can chew, but a few more good examples would be welcome.
I'm thinking that Joan's house on Dorset was quite a few years ago. So it may not, I don't know how much the process may have changed since then. It might have been a different situation.
Yeah, wait, 4914, that's Joan Ebzery.
Right.
Yeah,
15 years ago, maybe? Is that long
how
ago?
many years ago?
I was gonna say 15.
Oh, okay, yeah, that
10? I mean,
I imagine a lot things were pretty different back then. I know 4803 Grantham is obviously the most up to date.
right.
5522 Greystone is pretty up to date. I know like when that started, we had a different town manager and a different building permit administrator. But I feel like um, that's still a relevant project, obviously, or a recent project.
What about the one at Uppingham and Greystone? The one on the corner next to Joe.
5401 Uppingham.
Oh,
54
that's
Uppingham.
yeah, that's a relatively new one. It's been like a major renovation.
Well, that was one of those that qualified uh, as a renovation, and they moved in when it was still under construction, and they are allowed to do that because effectively you don't need an occupancy permit. So it has some interesting variance in terms of the other two, A and B, on the list. They're going to require occupancy permits, or they did, or they should.
Well, think about it. Just because it's interesting doesn't mean necessarily we should turn it into a case study. So we don't have to decide now. Just ponder that question. I'm not trying to create more work for us. If we only have 2 case studies, that's fine with me.
Oh yeah, and it's a beginning of putting and updating the library. So to me, we have to start. So and I was looking at it as a variant to give people an example of another example of construction, whether it's infill or the rehab.
Right. Thank you. So if I could move us on to the next point of the agenda, pausing to hear if there's anything else to cover here about the process. I'd like to talk briefly about research updates. So here are the points I'd like to cover. Response to committee ideas. There have been several put out to me just in the past week or so, including ideas about using historic district powers from Phyllis, authority to revise permit standards from Nancy, and Joe has had some creative thoughts about how to adopt transferable development rights and perhaps in conjunction with community land trusts. And I thought it would be useful to spend a few minutes on each of those topics. Maybe start with Joe first. Joe, I sent you some information just this afternoon that I'd put together that probably leads in the direction of you and me talking offline to clarify exactly what your strategy is there.
I agree.
But just so we're not making it a mystery, would you like to explain your notion about how transferable development rights might relate to homeowners who want to sell in such a way that they avoid having to sell to a developer?
Well, if you believe in preservation, that's a means to do it. And I was involved with the land trust in Calvert County, started 40 years ago. And basically, Calvert County has, like Montgomery County, I think they're the only 2 counties in the state of Maryland that have this ability to sell development rights from a parcel or a district to a receiving area. In the case of Calvert County, they were selling density off of farmland and putting it into town centers. And that was a part of their whole strategy of concentrating development and less impact on what they wanted to preserve, and that is the agriculture, not only landscape, but economy. So,
So in that case, the farmer gets paid basically not to develop his land?
he sells the development rights off the land. And many times there's an assessment of what the market value is of the property and then what it would be without those rights to.
Gotcha.
And theoretically, in the case of Somerset, we have houses that are mid-century, and basically this increased density would be sold off, so to speak.
So,
It is
so-
a complicated process. I don't think in this meeting we want to spend a lot of time on it, but what it shows is, and there's implications for people's value of their house. In the case of the land trust, it was unified. They wanted to preserve the agricultural land. I don't think it's that unified in the town of Somerset community. People have different reasons. They want to maximize their value. But I think it shows, because I think there's a lot of people that want to preserve things the way they are. And effectively, the American Chestnut Land Trust, when you go down various roads, it's the way it was 40 years ago, because the development rights were sold off, and it's preserved that way. So I think that's a point at and historic districts are very similar. That you have limited. Now, a lot of this somewhere in between is you can put easements on your property. And again, are you willing to take the hit on the value of your home? I don't think as a community it has legs. But it's something I think we need to talk about for people who really feel strongly about keeping the things the way they are. And that you have to go through all this and effectively strip the value away from your property or a group of properties.
So what Joe and I will be talking about is how does his theory, which is very interesting, relate to the legal structure for TDRs in Montgomery County. Montgomery County already has a regime for residential transfer of development rights, but it's done at the subdivision level, and it's extremely technical and complicated. Analogously, also in the District of Columbia, there is a land trust that is dedicated just to housing, not the environmental stuff. So there are interesting developments all around us that might lead us somewhere if we just think creatively about what Joe's bringing up. So this is in the Department of Creative Thinking, and I want to encourage that, especially at the early planning stages of this committee's life. Joe provided the segue to historic preservation. Phyllis sent me an interesting couple of pages of notes and observations, including the diversity of the Somerset real estate market. Phyllis, if you could just share with us some of the observations you made. And there's an open question that Phyllis and I are looking at in terms of whether historic preservation in Somerset could be expanded beyond the relatively small district that now exists. And if so, what are, is it feasible for this committee to look at more closely?
Do you want me to discuss just the historic preservation part?
Well, why don't you start with your notes on the real estate market? I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, okay. And sorry if I start to cough. I'm having terrible allergy problems. So I was just sort of thinking about stuff. And the question to me was, how do we preserve our architectural heritage and the character of the town while meeting the housing needs of those moving into our neighborhood. And to me, a big point that there's just not one demographic moving into Somerset. They're coming in all ages, all income levels, different stages of their life. We have new residents with young families, single buyers. We're getting a lot of middle-aged and baby boomer buyers coming in. It's been interesting to me, and the Ramblers are sought after as an alternative to condo living. That helps preserve them. I see people coming in to be close to grandchildren, children. I had a child move back in because she loved growing up here, and that's not unique. And one of the things we have is because people of the neighborhood, we have a robust new construction market. People want to love the charm of Somerset, but they want to look at it from a new house. So, that's one of the issues. In 2025, we had 15 houses sell between 1,160 and almost 5.4 million. So that's a big price range. Coincidentally, the highest price was in the historic district at 4709 Dorset, and the lowest price was on Warwick, and it sold to an investor. One of the things just noted, a mid-century home at 4911 Essex with a 33,000 square foot lot sold for 3.350 to a family who's knocked the house down. I read too much real estate stuff where mid-century houses get renovated and are prized, and obviously that mid-century was not. But the other thing is there seems to be an impression that builders will give residents the highest price when they're looking to sell. That's actually not usually the case. It varies. I mean, unfortunately, I think from Robert's point of view, the builder actually gave a pretty fair price to the owner on Grantham. But in my experience, when I've gotten multiple offers, the builder has been the low bidder on houses. So, okay. So then I've always thought, gee, should the historic district be expanded to preserve more of the town's architecture? And I've always thought about Grantham. But I think we have to note that the district happened in 1990, and that was before the new construction boom in town. When houses were being renovated and expanded, not being knocked down. There is a mid-century neighborhood in Bethesda, Carteret Springs, that now seems to be applying to be a district. We do have a few houses by Clothel Woodward Smith. They're not contiguous, so I don't know if they could be in a district or even if the sellers would want it. But the plus side of having a district is it preserves the town's architectural character and charm. And that's one of the things that makes our neighborhood valuable. But on the other hand, valuable to whom? Like people may like to look at the historic district, but they don't necessarily want to be in it. And there are cases where houses that were in the district with large lots sold for less than they would have if somebody could have torn the house down. So that's that. So that's interesting. I will also note that the three highest sales in the neighborhood, they were all on Dorset. They were all historic homes that sold one was 4750, 54, and 6 million. So it's just interesting. Um, I'm not sure there'd be much um, that people necessarily want to expand the historic district. I had this discussion with someone today who's in the district and said what an ordeal it was just to get a fence fixed, how tedious the process is. Um, and that led me to thinking, can we make the renovation permitting process less cumbersome to encourage preservation of existing homes and have more price points? And, are there things we could do, um, like could the town have a checklist so people know what they're getting into, like informing neighbors so people aren't surprised and upset about potential water issues by somebody expanding their house? How can the architect allay neighbors' concerns about water runoff? How can we make sure applicants have all of their documents they need to get town council approval? That the town council has had time to review documents, because when the council delays deliberations because they're not prepared, it's really tough for a homeowner who's not a builder. A resident on Greystone who did a beautiful renovation and expanded up a little bit. And he's had a lot of renovation experience in DC. And he said this was the worst process he ever encountered. And so then my third thing is, how do we encourage new homes fit in with surrounding houses? But the town can't really legislate good taste, and everyone's taste is different. We do have new homes that fit in very well with older and existing homes. But, it's, to me, is how do we preserve our architectural heritage, diversity of the neighborhood, and allow people of all price points to move in? And then, as I was writing this, I shared with Robert, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal Mansion section, neighborhood in Santa Monica, California. And there are some interesting quotes, and it applies to us. As prices rise, so does the tension between deep-pocketed buyers drawn to, in this case, La Mesa's price location, and those who want to preserve the street's historic homes as they are. And somebody else said, anything you want to do requires approval. There are constant questions. It's your property? Yeah, I'm sorry. Is it your property if you can't change it? And probably a lot of residents think that's the fair thing. And then others argue that restrictions are a positive thing for the neighborhood. It's counterintuitive, but these restrictions increase property values. I guess you could say property values for whom. But so I think the questions we're looking at are not unique to us, but so it's really a timely article. So those were my thoughts.
Thank you, Phyllis. Phyllis and I will talk more. The comparison to Santa Monica is interesting because they have a different model. Their historic preservation district is the entire city. But the duty to comply with design standards is triggered by the individual properties. So it's essentially a coalition of the willing. As an owner, you can put your house in the registry that then triggers the duties to comply. Sort of an owner-initiated covenant into the future that the government enforces. Those houses in Santa Monica are, most of them, a little past 100 years old now, and so their needs to make major renovations are even greater than Somerset, almost twice as old. So we'll be comparing the Santa Monica model versus the Montgomery County model. What's clear, Phyllis, since you and I talked, I went back and reread Article 24 of the Montgomery County Code and looked at the original statute in 1976. It's clearly a county show. The Historic Preservation District is the initiator of enforcement as well as review of applications. And then they pass it on to the Montgomery County Council, acting as the planning district council. And then they pass it on to the National Park, the Area-Wide Planning Commission on an even larger scale. And that's for purposes of any amendment or expansion of the zone. But so too does the Historic Review Commission have jurisdiction over the enforcement or compliance with the design standards. So it would be a county level decision. And for us, it's a question of whether we put questions like that, similarly TDRs, that's a county level jurisdiction, on the back burner or keep it on the front burner. It's not something the Town Council of Somerset has the authority to make a decision on. On the other hand, the Town Council of Somerset, if it thought it were a good idea, would be the best lobbyist before the county council if we think that's the direction we should take it. So we'll talk. We'll keep talking.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I have a bit of a concern of using the historic district as a way to manage development. Just seems a little not authentic, not genuine, in that it seems like a good thing to preserve properties that the community thinks are historic. That's and that something about it seems like we're in between those. So I just think it's important to be, I don't know, to be clear on that.
Some of the houses that were in the historic district in 1990, let's say, were 75 years old. Well, that's the age of mid-century homes. But on the other hand, I think what's very scary and why there probably wouldn't be a lot of agreement now in the town is, it's scary for people. How are they get the most value from their house when it's time to sell it? May
Right.
pay for their retirement or their senior facility. So
That's the other issue that I'm interested in,
yeah,
is the economics of all of this. And I'm not strongly on either side. I mean, I'm an environmentalist. I want to preserve the community. At the same time, if I were buying my house, I would want to knock it down. I mean, it's an old, it's a 1950s Rambler, underneath stuff. You'd have to do a lot of renovation. It'd be cheaper to build a new home. Now, the question in my mind is, okay, if there were some way that you could, if you restricted it to building it to, you restricted the building somehow, I'm just making this up, by like to 80%, it's sort of a reduction. I don't think you would necessarily lose 20% of the value. You'd probably lose some value, but you might not lose 20% of the value. And it'd be interesting to talk to people who've built houses here and moved into them. If it was more restrictive, would you have done it or not? They'll probably get different perspectives of that. And I don't know how you look at the economics of this. I don't know if economists have studied, the economic impact. But I think it's just so central to all of this, and understanding it with some factual basis, I think, is important.
I think there's something sort of counterintuitive about it, in that the more restrictive you are, you can have feelings about the restrictions, but that also leads to exclusivity, which can increase the value. So
Right.
there's different ways of looking at the same thing.
Yeah, but that's measurable. I don't know
Yeah.
where, if it has been measured or if people have
Mm.
attempted to measure that. And yeah, because our property is so valuable, our location is so valuable. Somebody who wants to build a huge house still might want to live in our community if they can only build 80% as big a house. I'm oversimplifying all of this
Mhm.
stuff, but having it some understanding of that, I think is important. And, it's very easy to say that we have value even if you can't build as big, but I don't know if that's true or not true. And it's probably, maybe it's true for some people. I don't know.
Mm.
But it seems like it's an important piece of this puzzle to, if there are ways to understand it and learn about it. I'm interested in that.
Well, that's the phase of our growth right now. That kind of question is what we should be talking about. Joe and then me.
Okay. A lot is we're talking about is driven by land value. I don't care what anybody says. And but getting back to the historic, there is criteria for setting up historic districts. And I know from the national perspective, a architectural style has to be 50 years to meet the criteria to even be considered uh, a to be designated. And down along the mall, many of the buildings that were the federal headquarters were built during the Johnson administration were falling into that category, and HUD building and so I think we have to look, and it'd be helpful to understand the Montgomery County's definition of what falls into that. And I'm sure it follows national guidelines to inform ourselves and the community kind of uh,
Hmm.
what that's about. Robert?
Montgomery County has guidelines. Um, there are actually 5 historic districts in Montgomery County, several of which are currently going through the process of getting county amendment approval to join the master plan as protected under Article 24. So I mentioned those 5. Several subdivisions in Bethesda, Carter Rock, Garrett Park, Potomac Overlook, and Rock Creek Woods. I think all of those except Garrett Park are essentially mid-century modern communities.
Well,
So, so the standard is all around us and it's being used already. We would be late to the show, actually, if we saw protection for those particular reasons. On the other hand, I share Ken's skepticism in terms of whether that would be an effective way to do it. Because when you look at those, take, for example, which one was I looking at? Well, both Potomac Overlook and Rock Creek Woods. I looked at the list of, let's hypothetically say 100 houses in each of those, give or take 25. 80% of those houses were listed as contributing, and 20% or less were listed as non-contributing. Somerset's different. Somerset's more of a crazy mix, much less homogeneous than any of those particular communities. And curiously, I just assumed that the Somerset Historic District was based on the similarity of the Victorians up on the high ground, the big houses on the high ground. But I went back and read this description of Somerset in the Montgomery County Master Plan, and au contraire, it was 5 different styles that were cited as making Somerset an interesting community and worth preserving. So Somerset's key word was diversity, not Victorian. Interesting. So I don't know. I think it's worth the conversation just to see if there is some interesting 3 bears position, not too complicated and not too soft and inclusive, but just right, where some historic mechanism would help us and rationalize our process to keep people from feeling like they were just flailing in a sea of economic confusion. And I'll give myself one more point to make about Ken. I went to law school because I don't do math, Ken. But I think the answer to your challenge is modeling. If there were particular scenarios or types of development, and I'm pretty sure we could find an example or two of several different approaches are all around us, and look at what happened to them. Look at them in hindsight as a case study, and at least we would have a feel for what it could look like and what it did look like for those houses.
Mm-hmm.
So you all keep your ears and eyes open as you take your evening walks and think about houses that would be case studies, not from the permit nightmare point of view, but from the economic, how does that house make sense point of view.
That would be good. It would be also good to look at a community that has actively sought, and there's got to be some of these, sought to sort of restrict development in some ways, and see if there's some assessment of the economic impact of that.
And the 5 I mentioned, I think, are interesting ones to look at.
Yeah, yeah.
Carteret Springs, mid-century homes. I mean, it's more homogeneous in our neighborhood. There are big lots, relatively speaking, and a few different models. So they have never, I understand they have frowned on builders. So I don't.
All right. So we have 15 minutes left, and now I will become a little result oriented, if I may. I'd like to quickly zoom over several chunks of work that I've accomplished in the last week or two so that you know it's there and you can look at it yourselves. So let's start by looking very quickly at the so-called library. What this is a shared drive, shared Google Drive with 5 major folders and within it subfolders. And it's up. And it's available to anybody who has the link, which you see here on this screen. And I'm pretty sure if I didn't send it to you already in an email, I'll send it to you directly, and it'll be part of the minutes for today's meeting. So just to dive into a couple of these development topics, for example, these are the topics I've collected materials on over the last few months. There are at least several items, and in some cases, 50 items in some of these categories. So this is just my starting point. I invite you all to start contributing to this so that there's no excuse. Anybody's curious, we'll have everything that we could possibly share available to both ourselves and in the entire community. Municipal codes. I'm gathering all the local ones that we usually look at for comparison so that we're not weirdly out of sync with our neighbors. And then I'm including all the so-called leading models. Leading in the sense that there's, for example, Boulder County has a special review process. Boulder City has a floor area ratio method of regulation. Lake Forest, Illinois has a built-in waiting period for teardowns. Each of these cities has something interesting and specific that we can learn from. And again, as you read about things like Santa Monica could be on the list from Phyllis's recent newspaper exploration. I can, as I did in this case, when Phyllis told me about Santa Monica, I downloaded the Santa Monica code, and it's now in our library.
Robert, how would you like us to make contributions? Just upload them, or do you get notification, or communicate them through you?
Good question.
Yeah.
I don't need to be the middleman. I'd say please upload them, but also send me a notice. And that way, when we have our next meeting, we'll do quick rounds and everybody who uploaded new material can explain what they did and why.
Okay.
And now I think I'll just skip to the end of the agenda. Let me quickly get back my slides. As I have in the past, I'm going to skip a couple pieces that I wanted to cover today, but you were more interesting. And I'll get back on the agenda right here. So next steps. Our next meeting is August 5th, the regular meeting. My goal is to put a work plan together by Labor Day. And as this morning, I got up early this morning and thought, oh my God, that seems like that would be hard to do. But then I just started thinking about what work should we try to accomplish based on our committee's charter. And 90 minutes later, I had outlined a whole work plan. So I'm sharing that with you today. And I'll also share with you the Google Drive document in an email. So as you can see, I've organized the work plan according to quarters, starting with July 1st of 2026. And our first quarter is about getting organized as we're having today's conversation. You know, should we focus on economics? Should we include historic preservation? Should we be more creative with TDRs? Those kinds of questions are, sifting and sorting. But now I'm pretty confident that we can have a work plan that follows these contours by Labor Day, and we have 2 more meetings to talk about it between now and then. In the second quarter, that would be the information gathering stage. I've listed a number of different kinds of data, not including Ken's notion of economics of development, but probably should add that to the list. These are kinds of data that we might ask the town staff to help us with, or we might be willing to pitch in and do it ourselves. And in our next meeting, I'll explain what I mean by these various categories of data and research. The third quarter, starting in January, for those 3 months, I would hope that we focus on comparing alternative ways of doing X. So if we think that historic preservation is a good idea, what do we want to compare ourselves to? If we think that using a floor area ratio constraint on development is a viable option, to whom do we want to compare ourselves? So that's what that stage of work is for the committee. And finally, the fourth quarter, April through June, would be completing final products. And to my way of thinking, what would be useful to the council, and I'm putting it out now for you to critique or join the bandwagon, is to give them first an evaluation matrix for our top 5 ideas. What is the idea? What are its pros and cons? Every idea is going to have trade-offs in terms of its economic impact, or the points that every committee is asked by our new mayor to study. And that includes the administrative impact, the financial impact on town resources, and of course, the question of legal authority. So for our top 5 or 6 ideas, we would do comparisons and evaluation on all those points. And I'll take the lead as editor, but everybody would have a chance to weigh in and file supporting or dissenting comments on the recommendations that we might make. And finally, in that final quarter, we would clean up our compilation of the resources in this library so that by the time we're done next June, there'll be a complete library to back up, and the people that follow us will have that resource to work with.
I have one small thought on, I think that's great, by the way. That's a great work plan. One thought of something that we might find interesting during the gathering information stage is maybe have either some national experts who are on these topics, who've studied them, and as well as some people from towns that have implemented some interesting things, to have the people who've done them. How did they do it? What worked? What didn't work? What advice would they have for us? I don't know. I mean, we could do that individually, but it would be an interesting group, if you'd had a panel of 3 people who had, more experience than we do in looking at this stuff. It would be interesting. I'd be really interested in hearing from
There,
you.
It sounds like fun.
the town has town talks where they've had individuals and panels. And that could be a part of the rollout of this. I really, to me, the council is just one group. I think we need to be focusing on communicating with the entire community as best we can. And that would, I think, feed into what you're putting on the table of a town talk, and you get anywhere from 20 to 50 people there. They're interested, and they're recorded and available for people who couldn't make it. And there's also, I think, Zoom connections. Justin, am I right in terms of you've been staffing some of those? Am I right in terms of town talks?
You're muted, Justin, you're muted.
Whoops. Yeah, I've been helping out with the town talks and staff that.
Anyway, we can figure out how to do it, but I think that's good. And and you just raised a question, Joe, that raised a question to me that like, have we put stuff? I think there's been stuff in one town journal about our committee, maybe. But
Yeah, I'm going to do an article after this meeting.
okay. And I think we should have something in every, unless nothing's going on, but I think even if it's short, something regularly in the town journal, I think would be a good thing. So people know what we're doing and they have an opportunity to come to any meeting that they want. And seems like the best full communication, or one of the best.
Yep. These are all great ideas, and we shall do them.
Excellent.
Maura, you've been quiet. Do you have any hard thoughts? And
No deep thoughts here at all, Joe. Just
No-
listening
no-
and
from where you're
just
headed,
listening and taking it in.
yeah, it's a lot.
It's a
Robert,
lot.
Robert, does this committee need to weigh in on these proposed code amendments that you raised earlier that are in the packet? Because I've got grave concerns about them. I don't think they should move forward until they've gotten some more review. Now, it's only going to a work session, but usually when it's in writing, these things can kind of move along pretty fast. And, and you raised the issue of who approves these permits administratively. It's the mayor. That's in the code amendment. And one of the types of permit applications that would not receive a hearing is adding a second story or higher to an existing house. Also, it removes the requirement for a planting plan, removes the requirement for a parking plan. And I'm actually making a motion now, and I'll see how well it's received, or if it gets a second, that we express our grave concerns to the council about these and urge the council not to move forward with these until there's additional review and input on these. So I'm making that motion now, and I'll see if it gets a second.
I'll second it just so we could talk.
I have a quick question. I wonder if anybody knows. Is Carter Rock Springs the community that has most recently come up with a historic designation or some kind of limiting development proposal?
I'm not sure. I think Potomac Overlook is the most recent, but I could double check it.
I thought Carteret Springs is in
Excuse me,
process.
Kumar has brought us into Robert's rules, and there's a second. And so, Phyllis, you're out of order.
Oops, sorry.
And so are you, Nancy.
Okay.
The motion on the floor is, should we take on the mayor and say, hey, whoa, dude, slow down. We need to think about this raft of amendments that you're proposing.
Well-
Would anyone like to speak to the motion?
I'm kind of surprised as his being hot to trot on the development committee, and he's proposing these changes kind of to the rules of the road, which kind of we're trying to understand the current ones, and he's moving, kind of shifting it. To me, there was an inconsistency with our charge, and but there must be good administrative reasons, and I have to. I'm sure that'll come out in the work session.
I guess my opinion on this, I would prefer to do it the way you did the last issue, Kumar, where you encouraged all of us to join in and make comments. We don't have a lot of people are missing from the committee here. I think it's important to maintain the integrity of this committee and the working relationships, and that we have a good consensus. And I mean, I think it'd be great for you to, like you did the last time, do outreach to all the people, and that, might not have quite as much impact, but would still have a lot of impact. And Rohit knows the people who are on this committee.
Well, if I could speak in Kumar's defense, I would say this. He's only asking it that we express concern about the potential impact of a large number of proposals all at the same time. And that strikes me as a relatively polite thing to say. My concern, Kumar, is that there's a lot of spaghetti on the wall. There's a lot of little ideas and maybe a couple big ideas, and it's just hard to kind of tease it all apart. It's true that these procedures are in our scope of work. It's also true that if we dove into all these procedural questions, we could be working on procedure for the next couple of months and not the agenda that I was putting forward.
Yeah.
So it's secondary. It's important, but secondary. That's sort of my reaction, which lands me back in kind of kin space. But I have no problem saying to Rohit, are you trying to make our job more complicated? Are you trying to slow us down? Are you sending a mixed message that you created a committee to study the permit process, but now you're going full bore with 20 amendments? It
is. So we don't know how fast it's going to move. It could well be that, the council members themselves will kind of slow it down. And it is a 10-page document. There's a lot in there, but we do have a quorum here, so we could vote on this. And it could be more of a soft, it doesn't have to be as strenuous as I expressed it. It could be more of a soft concern that we just, urge the council to, not put this on the August. Okay, so I don't know if there's going to be an August council meeting. I think they were trying to cancel it. So it could well be that it wouldn't be introduced until September anyway. But we could just kind of express a soft concern that it does need some more input and thought before it gets finalized.
Let me ask a question designed to put Roberts back in the grave, which is, might we actually have a consensus that this is softly concerning? This large number of amendments with a 10-page memo that touches in many aspects of this committee's brand new charter, that we would really appreciate an ample opportunity to study it, recognizing that we're already in the middle of a lot of work. And among our leading questions are A, B, and C. So my thought would be to handle it that way, and I'd be happy to draft an email to the mayor laying out what I think the leading questions are and circulate it with you all to see if you would add any to it. But is that true? That kind of message from me on behalf of the committee saying we all share these concerns?
It seems like a good approach to me.
I think that's okay with me. I mean, I'm good with that. I think just, whether it comes in a letter or a phone call or whatever, I think it's important to communicate that, I have no idea what's in the 10 pages, and I'm sure most of the people here
We can invite
don't.
him to our next meeting, August 5th.
and explain it.
Be there or be square.
All
right. And Kumar, I got your email this afternoon, and I will use that as guidance for what I put in the draft and send it right back to you. Not right back to you, but in a day or two. I think we're done with this interesting and important point, which leads me to say that we're 3 minutes over time. I put in the chat the Google Doc link for the outline. Let me check your chat in Zoom, and you'll be able to download that document, and I'll send it to you by email as well.
But we didn't vote on my motion, but I'm kind of taking it as implied that you'll draft an email and send.
Yeah, I was proposing a friendly consensus, so that a vote
No,
wouldn't
that's
be necessary.
fine. I'm happy to withdraw my motion if you think that's the better route.
I think so. The point is to engage, do it quickly, give ourselves time to sort out which of these, I don't know, I'll call them 20 options, are important and which are merely good housekeeping. And whether they should leap into these changes while we're still studying the same issues at the same time.
I think that's good.
As you can tell, Kumar, I'm not a huge fan of Robert's rules. Like, any other comments for the good of the order before we break up today?
Just thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Robert,
Thank
for
you.
all the work you're doing.
You're so welcome. Let me give you a 1-week deadline to look at that outline of a proposed work plan and just send me your reactions. Just reply to the email saying you left something out. I'll bet you $10 that Nancy will. She'll be the first. You left this out. And I'll bet you $20 that Kumar will add 2 things that we haven't talked about before, but we all agree are important. So I'm sure you'll have comments. Just do it in a week. And likewise, when I send you the draft email to the mayor, please turn it around in like 48 hours. Just look at it and say, what did I screw up and what should be added? We'll just get it out, get it done.
Great.
Thank you all.
All right.
Have a great
Good night.
week.
Thanks,
you.
Robert. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.